Do you like beer?
Do you like podcasts?
Do you like beer podcasts?
Then check out Crackin' One Open, a podcast about brews, news, and pop culture reviews.
Every week, we crack open a new craft beer from breweries around the country.
And sometimes the world.
We'll talk about how it was made, what's in it, the history of the brew, and the brewery.
Then we'll give our tasting notes, and while we're finishing up, we'll talk about some of the latest goings-on in the world of pop culture.
So check out Crackin' One Open with Mike and Elise, part of the Forgotten Entertainment family.
Hey, it's Andrew Morgan, host of the Nomcast, the Netflix original movie podcast. Each week, we review the biggest Netflix original movies with special guests from the film industry, the music industry, comedians, and of course, our fellow podcasters. Check us out on the web at nomcastpod.com. Follow us on the socials at nomcastpod. And most importantly, listen and subscribe to us wherever you get podcasts. Hit that beat one time.
Hi, I'm Mike Field.
And I'm Pat Whalen.
Pat is a lifelong comic book geek.
And Mike is a filmmaker and storyteller. So naturally, a bulk of our conversations surround the world of the Marvel movies. Some consider the MCU one of the greatest achievements in modern-day filmmaking, and others just think they're comic book movies. Each episode will tackle one film and discuss the differences between the comic book and what's on screen. We'll explore the growth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe from its inception to present day and beyond, and have a little fun along the way. You may not have asked for it. You certainly don't need it, but you'll be happy we're here. We think. This is yet another MCU podcast.
Hey, Pat. So we're back, and you know I love this character, and I love these movies. We're going to be talking about some Thor Ragnarok today.
It's time to Ragnarok and roll.
Oh, you've been waiting to say that for a while.
Now we can move on to piling on this movie.
Ooh, spoiler alert. All right, so real quick, as you know we like to do, Thor is rated PG-13, has a runtime of 130 minutes, production budget of $180 million. It came out on November 3rd, 2017. Opening weekend, it did $122 million. Domestic, $315. Worldwide, $853. You have a new director here, Taika Waititi, who is his first time, but then he's going to come back for, I guess he's doing Thor Love and Thunder. They start that?
Yeah, well, I think they're down in pre-production right now.
Okay.
We just saw the news that Chris Pratt had joined the cast, which makes sense because...
Well, I heard they're all in it.
Yeah, last we saw him in the end of Endgame, they were all blasting off into space.
What I read that they're all in it, and that Rocket and Groot have a big part in this movie.
Good. I'd like to see that.
The three writers, Eric Pearson, Craig Kyle, and Christopher Yost. Pearson is doing the Black Widow, which is coming up at some point in our lifetime. He also was a script doctor in the last two Avengers movies. Craig Kyle has done the Iron Man animated TV series, and he's part of the creative committee for Marvel movies, which is the first time I've heard that, but it makes absolute sense.
Yeah, so at some point they put together basically an in-house staff to start working on these things, brainstorming, pulling out ideas,
right.
Putting things together.
Right. No,
getting things in motion.
It makes sense.
To tie in.
I know that with Pixar movies, they usually have you present a script and then everybody gets in the room and kind of, okay, listen, what's this? What are we gonna do here?
Yeah. Well, I like that the fact that the difference being with Pixar is they work on the script until it's perfect.
Oh, of course. That's why I'm always a huge Pixar guy. Anyways. And then Christopher Yost also had done Thor Dark World. Then you got a bunch of people who have done no Marvel movies. You have Mark Mothersbaugh. I don't know how
Good name.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it. I apologize, sir. He has done the music. And then Javier, I'm going to butcher this, Aguirre Sorobi. I apologize. Anyways, they have not. This is their first movie. I'm assuming that Waititi brought them in.
What does Javier do?
Cinematography.
Oh, cinematography.
I apologize. Did not say that. That is my bad. And we all know who produces it, so moving on. So we have the usual suspects in here. You have Chris Hemsworth as Thor. You actually have Mark Ruffalo as Hulk. The first time that Hulk was voiced by someone other than Lou Ferrigno.
And it's noticeable.
Well, he's actually saying words.
Yeah.
He's talking.
Well, yeah, that too.
he's having full-on dialogue. Yes. But you have some new people to the fold. Our baddie Hela, played by Cate Blanchett. Grandmaster is Jeff Goldblum. Valkyrie is Tessa Thompson. Scourge is Carl Urban. And then I have Surtur. Is that his name? Surtur is actually Clancy Brown. Yeah. For those who don't know. Some of these people do not move on because they die. So anyways.
Yeah.
All right. Pat, I know you don't like this movie.
You don't like this movie either.
But I don't like a lot of movies.
This is true.
there's parts in this movie that I enjoy. I like the music. I like the opening when he fights them, and Thor is more comedic in this movie, which is always his better attribute in the Avengers movies. He just kind of like his wit. I struggle to find something else. I mean, the Hulk fight is good, but the stuff with Hulk, while the dialogue is funny, it's just, I don't know. It's a lot of. Go ahead, because I'm gonna
hit on the stuff that I thought was good first, and then we could go on. First of all, though, I think we're gonna lose a lot of our audience here. I think a lot of people like this movie probably because it was different from what we had gotten in the Thor universe before.
Yeah,
and it was a lot funnier, but that doesn't mean it was good. But I'll get to that in a minute. The first piece, this is probably maybe up there with the Avengers movie, the first Avengers movie, the closest to a comic book feel that we're going to get.
Okay.
The colors, there's scenes that are ripped straight from the panels in the source material, which we'll talk about, but it feels like a comic book. It's not a superhero movie. It's a comic book movie.
Okay.
And I think that helps it for one. Number two, you talked about the music. The music is pretty good. I think it helps define the tone.
We're talking about the popular songs. We're not talking about the score.
But the score, and one of our listeners did message me on the side and say, hey, this is one of those moments where they pull from some of the scores from Thor movies past.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to build more of a cohesive sound towards this film as an evolution towards the characters, which was a nice piece. And that's a nice pickup, because sometimes when you're bringing in new composers, they tend to just do their own thing. But I think that was a nice way to kind of tie everything together.
But see, I struggle with figuring out where that is, because the music that I remember is obviously the two songs, one at the end, one at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The 70s glam
band
song,
thing.
they kind of have it when he's escaping.
Yep.
And then at the end of the credits. But then I struggle to figure out where I'm looking for this theme.
I think there's some moments where you get the Thor, like that coronation sound, the theme to it, so it dials back to Thor 1, where he's walking down the hallway. And if I'm trying to remember exactly where it is, but there are moments where he's getting ready for the fight, getting ready to lead the rebellion. There's some moments I think early on too where it's got some Odin callbacks,
right?
When you go see Odin in that Norwegian cliffside,
right? Yeah,
and so I think
which is clearly we only have Anthony Hopkins for one day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, 2 days.
2 days.
Because you have Loki as him when they're in Asgard.
True. This is true.
You got him for 2 days. He filmed another movie in between those two scenes.
So what else? What else did you like? That's it? Nice.
I think the fights are pretty good, especially the one between Thor and Hulk.
Yep.
I find that enjoyable. What I didn't like, and I'm kind of stretching down to the didn't like territories, I wish they hid Hulk as much as possible in the marketing. Because by the time you get to that scene where he says, oh, it's a friend from work.
Everyone knows.
Everyone knows it's coming. The story's already come out that was a little Make-A-Wish kid on set that said, you should say it's a friend from work. And so Chris Hemsworth comes up and says it. And that's the feel-good moment. I think if you held on to the Thor reveal or the Hulk reveal until after the movie came out, things would have been much...
That might have been tough to do.
It would have been really tough to do because he's in a lot of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have preferred to, but they hid a lot of the Smart Hulk stuff, the Banner Hulk stuff from Endgame in the marketing. They digitally edited him out.
Why? Because
they didn't want to reveal that he had come to terms with his Hulk side.
Oh, okay. So they knew he was in it.
And they also edited a lot of Fat Thor out too. So they hid some of these moments that were going to be so key. So they could digitally remove some of this stuff and do a fake trailer.
Right. Do you think that Thor is going to be overweight in Thor God and Thunder?
I don't think he's going to be as fit. I don't think he's going to be overweight, though. I think it's going to be to a point where Chris Hemsworth doesn't have to work out extra. So Chris Hemsworth has this Center app, which we're not sponsored by. If you want to, we're available for sponsorship. But it's a workout app where he gives out his workouts that he does. This is why we're not getting the sponsorship. It's stupid expensive.
Of course it
Don't
is.
get it. Just go look up exercises.
Well, there went that sponsorship out the window.
But I think he's in shape. I just don't think because he wore like a 70-pound fat suit.
Well, yeah,
Like, that can't be fun
You
either.
probably have to be in shape just to wear that suit,
Right. So why not just, do your normal, like shows your normal body, not your, the extra Marvel workouts that you
your
do.
DiCaprio body.
Yeah. Ugh.
Whoa, I respect that. DiCaprio don't care. I love it. Good for you, Leo.
We're talking way too much about these guys' bodies.
I'm comfortable in my own sexuality, Pat, where I can talk about it. You're looking very fit. I'm just kidding. So let's get to what we don't like.
Yeah, I think that was it. That's all I got.
All right. Well, my biggest kind of complaint or negative about this movie, and it has to do with not just it's a nitpicky thing. It's more about story. Is your villain in this movie is Hela, and she absolutely feels like a supporting character
She's
in
like
this.
20
You
minutes
never
of the
see
movie.
her. I see more Jeff Goldblum as Grandmaster than I do about Hela, and so I'm not afraid of like I'm supposed to be. I'm not concerned about her doing whatever she does. I don't care about her backstory. They do the thing where she rips down the facade of the dome that they're in and shows the real way that Odin came to power, and he tried to hide it, which makes me laugh. Why didn't you just repaint it? Why did you put just more cinder blocks over it? But whatever, that's fine. It's for the movie. I have no feeling whatsoever because she's barely in the movie.
Yeah.
What gives? This is a Thor movie, not Thor and Hulk are on. I know you're going to tell me it's Planet Hulk, but
No. I'm in complete agreement with you. They shoehorn the Planet Hulk storyline in there, the Gladiator storyline in there. And I don't really know why. Maybe they just felt that they couldn't do a compelling story with Hela. I have no idea because it opens up. You have, I don't know how many villains do you have in this? You got Surtur in the beginning.
Yep.
You have sort of Scourge, who's your kind of sidekick villain.
yeah.
And then you got Hela who shows up. She's got these two badass moments where three, I guess, where she breaks the hammer.
Yep.
She kills all of the Asgardian army.
Yep.
And then slices Thor's eye out.
Kills all of them a la Matrix style with her moves.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And the pointy stuff coming out of everywhere.
Slices Thor's eye off real easy.
And he's still capable of moving and doing everything.
No
in that
blood,
moment.
no nothing. Just kind of like,
No, I agree. I think they don't spend enough time with her. They spend more time on Sakaar, which they don't even spend that much time on Sakaar. They fight once, then Thor breaks out of the apartment.
right.
And then that propels that story into the revolution and everything. So there's just too many moving pieces in this one.
There's a lot of, I think why a lot of people really like this movie, or they say, oh, this movie's good, for a couple of reasons. One, it's the best of the Thors. I'll say that. It's better it's got more action going on and more style in this movie than the first two.
I'll agree with that. I think it's got a tighter story in Thor 1.
I can agree that it's 1 and 3 are up there. 2 is let's
We're not talking about 2.
put Dark World in the closet and never see
This
it
is
again.
like the
Let's
Indiana
close
Jones
that up.
trilogy.
Don't start with me about the Indiana Jones trilogy, because we will end this podcast about Thor, and all I will do is talk about Crystal Skull. But I understand what you're saying, and it's in the correct order for all those who don't understand out there. It's 1, 3, 2, 4. Okay, it's not 3, 1, 2, 4 like you like to tell me.
I'm just using saying if we have an analogy to Thor, it's 1, 3, 2, 4.
Okay, that's fine. Anyways. So I mentioned the style in this movie, and like there's a lot of style in this movie in terms of what I like, the comedy and how it looks, and just kind of the overall like funness of the movie, which is not a word I know. Compare the other two movies and compare it to a lot of the other stuff in the MCU up to this point.
Yeah.
But that is all there is in this movie. There is no substance.
No.
It's all style. And I think a lot of people like it because it's got great music. Oh, the action's great. But when you sit there, if you watch this again and again and again, like you should with all great movies, you slowly start to realize that what is actually happening here?
Nothing. Well, I think you sent me an article back when this came out, when we were, back in 2017. And I think I remember talking to you about it. I'm like, I just don't like this movie.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think it was any good. There was too much comedy to it. And like you said, there was no substance. And I forget where the article came from. I don't know if we'll be able to dig it up at this point, but people and audiences react more to films that they can laugh at.
Sure.
Because that's more memorable to them. So to me, this is more, and I'll even say, this is more like a a Wedding Crashers type comedy, but Wedding Crashers has more substance to
Wedding
it.
Crashers is good though.
Wedding Crashers has substance.
I always talk about with comedies, Wedding Crashers, like when you see a movie like Wedding Crashers and it's funny, but it's actually a really good movie because they have to make you root for the heroes, the lead.
And they're jerks to start.
They are, but you have to make the audience not only make them laugh, but also make them like them, that want them to get the girls. Like that they're going to get the girl in the end. But like that's inevitable in all romantic comedies. They have to earn it for you to be like, yes, get her.
In this, there's no deserving moment.
No.
There's no substance to it. All it is just joke after joke. And I think a lot of those jokes, when they try to have those substantive moments to it, like Thor just mentioned, Thor's having the conversation with Valkyrie and Hulk. And this is the scene that gets me all the time. And I point to it as the reason I really dislike this movie is Thor is having this, he's like, oh, my best friend just got killed. My father just died. My dead sister just showed up, and then he has this emotional moment where he's really contemplating all the things that he just lost in his life. And then he gets hit in the head with a dodgeball.
Right. Cause he throws the ball to get out.
Yeah.
And it hits him in the head because he's about to say that's what heroes do, which is a nice line, but it's completely lost because you went for the joke.
Right.
And listen, that's a choice.
And it's fine to go for the joke once or twice, but they went for the joke every single turn that they could in this movie.
Right.
There was no moment where, they gave us the joke because it was unexpected and it is, that's what heroes do. And then he realizes, well, this is going to be a different type of adventure. That's fine.
Yeah.
But then they do it again and they do it again and they do it again and again and again.
Yeah.
And there's no redeeming moment where it finally clicks for everybody.
At some point, you have to have some kind of emotion where they do it with Loki and Thor.
Yes.
They give that what it needs, their relationship, the whole thing in the elevator when they're going up before, and they undercut it again. Like, let's send help, that kind of that thing. They do that again.
But the way that they play it, and Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston have great chemistry.
Well,
and they always have.
But also, to that point, they've had countless movies where they have built this.
Yes.
So you're watching those scenes and you have all the other scenes in your mind about how the relationship. So let's get to Valkyrie, and which I texted Pat when I was watching this again. And I said, I don't like her character in this movie. I don't, because something horrific happened to her. She lost all her friends, and she probably, they made it seem like she lost somebody she really loved when that person sacrificed her.
We'll get to that.
That's what I got.
Tell your thing, and then I'm going to tell you.
Yeah. So her name is not Valkyrie, right? That's the name of she's a Valkyrie.
She's a Valkyrie.
But then she's taken the name for some reason.
We'll get to the comics piece of it.
Regardless. Yeah. So she's lost all the people that she worked with and people that she loved. And that's what it seemed to me. And Hela killed them all. And she's gone off to just be a drunkard and to forget it all. There's a real heartbreak there that they completely just gloss over because they choose to have her be this, like as Pat puts it, fake badass. Yeah. To have her do this strut at the end of the movie, to go to comedy for some bits for her. When Thor gives her the outfit, I found this in the armory. Like he had time to go to the armory to get a gun after all this was happening at the end of the movie. Gives her he's like, I found this. And that's like, and there's like maybe like a half a second of like some kind of emotional connection, but there is nothing else with her that, again, you gotta make it earn. You have to earn it.
Yes.
Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
No, I was because you mentioned that it felt like she lost somebody very close to her. Valkyrie was intended to be the first gay character. Well, I thought she was. But they never show any real scenes for it, and that got fans ticked off because they had promoted her that way. Tessa Thompson had talked her up. Marvel had talked her up and said, we're finally getting more diversity in the MCU. We have
look at us guys, we're doing right.
Right, we got LGBTQ representation, and then it's all implied.
Right,
like you never see it because, and I don't know if it's because it's a Disney movie, if Marvel's fearful of international distribution. I don't know, but that became a big kind of minor but firestorm following the release of this one. That
they should have just gave her a girlfriend when they went to the planet. What is it? I always call the planet Cigar, but when they went to Cigar, and like when they first see her and she's hanging out, just give her a girlfriend. Give her someone that she's with. That she's got. Why does it need to be some big deal? Like just do that. It's okay, Marvel. We can handle it. We can handle it.
We're okay with this.
Anyways. But
I agree
my thing is that they don't do any kind of character development for her. So where I want her to overcome. Like, think of it like this. Last time she was at Asgard, she lost everybody to Hela. And so she left. And then the first time that she meets an Asgardian, which is Thor, he tells her Odin's dead, Hela's back. And she has no emotion on her face. Yeah. She's just like, oh, well, you're all dead anyways. Like, this woman decimated everybody you loved, and you at no point, like, you don't even give him a brave face. And then we get a moment where you turn around and you're just clearly shook.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. And I'm sorry.
She doesn't pack a bag. She doesn't get ready to move across
nothing.
another universe.
There's nothing. Like, say what you want about how long Endgame is and how long Infinity, like the Avengers movies, and say what we will about a lot of things, but in Captain America trilogy and the Iron Man trilogy and throughout, there is real emotion at times. And that's why you care when Tony Stark dies in the end of Endgame. Apologies if you don't know that.
Spoilers.
Spoiler, whatever. But there's no, like, I don't care about anything to do with the Valkyrie character in this movie, to the point where at the end of the movie, and I talked to you a little bit about this, how great it was when Thor realizes he's not the god of hammers, as his father so eloquently puts in the dream. You're the god of hammers, okay? And he's the god of thunder.
But then he shoots lightning out.
Yeah, which I love. I'm the god of thunder, but I can harness lightning. That doesn't make sense, Thor. You're the god of cold air and hot air coming together in the stratosphere. How does that relate to electricity? But okay, it's fine. We're good. And he comes down, he jumps down. They got that. It's a nice, it's almost like a painting. It's a nice
comic
shot.
book scene.
And it's great.
From the comic book.
It's great. It's a great moment. And as great as that moment is when Thor jumps onto the Rainbow Bridge, I know the Bifrost, and is going to fight all those dudes. There's a complete 180 when Valkyrie decides to light off a firework and struts from this ship. Like, yeah, let's go. Where have you been for 20 minutes? And why are you important? Oh, frustrating.
Yeah. I got nothing else. You're right about all of that. The only thing I'd add is I wish they didn't waste Carl Urban on this. He was great in the role. I loved him in the role.
It's because you like him in The Boys. That's why
I love him in The Boys. I loved him in Dredd. Was a great movie.
Dread's a good movie, and I really like him as Bones in Star Trek. He's a really good Bones.
That was good. Yeah. So he's in Almost Human too. Was another good one.
Oh, the TV show.
The TV show.
Yeah, I like that show. That was with who was the other guy? I can't. Who cares? But yes, no, I like that too.
Yeah. So I really like Carl Urban in a lot of things, and he was fantastic in this role, for what the role was. But now I wish that Michael Ealy.
That's right.
He was the character.
Right. No, it was a good show.
It was a good show.
And of course it was on Fox.
Yep.
So therefore Fox doesn't have any patience, and they delete and they cancel. I don't even know why. By the way, at some point I stopped watching Fox shows, even though like, oh, that looks good. I go, what's it on Fox? Yeah, it's going to be canceled.
Yeah. Let me know when it gets to season 3.
Yeah.
And I'll check it out.
They don't stick with anything. So
except for Gotham.
Yeah. Whatever.
Anyway,
some metric there that I don't know about. That's
back
fine.
to Carl Urban. Loved him in this role, but I wish we could get more of him in the MCU later on.
Well, he's done now.
Okay. I know. So I
just kept trying to figure out if that was hair that he had shaved into a little point on his head,
or that was tattoo type.
Is it a tattoo? Because it's raised.
Oh, that is a tattoo.
We don't need to dive into that. That's fine. All right, so let's get off the movie because I can be here all night.
Wants to get off the movie.
All right, so I sent you obviously my stuff about the comics.
Yep.
I know you like to do a little brief intro about do you want to do a brief intro about the comic?
We introduced most of the characters in previous movies, and we'll get to Valkyrie later on. You know, she's one of the newer characters.
Well, tell me, let's talk about where they got the storylines for this movie from the comic world.
So there were a handful of moments in this. I'll save the Ragnarok piece for last and kind of cut to the first two. If you'll notice that the Gladiator event, the Grandmaster's Gladiator, was called the Contest of Champions. There was a Marvel limited series. It was actually Marvel's first event series way back in the early 80s that saw the Grandmaster face off with the living embodiment of death, the character that Thanos is in love with. As we get to Infinity War, we'll touch more on that later. But they pick a team of heroes, and they are supposed to fight each other and face off against each other. And so they do. And the winner, if Grandmaster's team wins, gets the life and the soul of the Collector, who's played by Benicio del Toro. So, and they're brothers, they're related through the Celestials and everything. So, and in this series in the MCU, they're brothers. So there's that nice connection there. But Thor and Hulk aren't in this series.
In the Contest of Champions.
In the Contest of Champions. Like, they're in a brief scene early on when they gather up all the heroes, and then the Grandmaster Death pick their teams. It's basically, you're in the schoolyard at recess. this is the fun fact, and this is why it was limited to certain characters. It was intended to be a tie-in and a celebration of the 1980 Summer Olympics.
Okay.
But it was shelved because the U.S. was protesting. The Olympics were set to be in Moscow.
Right.
And so the U.S. protested, so Marvel shelved the series, and they published it like 2 or 3 years later. And that's why you have characters, and they're brand new characters from Germany, Argentina, China, Ireland, because they were meant to be these global heroes coming together.
Right.
And that was my fun fact on that one.
The character of the Grandmaster in the comic, he's the brother of the Collector.
Yeah.
But not in this movie.
No,
right?
in the movie he is. In the comic, he's part of the Celestials.
Okay, well, in the movie, it made it seem like they might have just been the narrative that he wrote, that he was the first of them all, and he landed on this garbage planet.
I think he was the first of the people on Sakaar.
So he lands on this garbage planet on his own.
Thought so.
All right.
I don't know.
The planet's a garbage planet, right? Like this is people would dump their trash.
Yeah, and then there's scavengers.
Are you food or never mind?
Yeah, right.
So
food or fighter.
What else is from the comics in this
movie? The second
movie?
one is one we mentioned earlier, is Planet Hulk. So Planet Hulk was the series from 2006 that saw Hulk crash land on Sakaar. So they use the same planet, and he gets captured and forced to fight in these gladiator games. So think Russell Crowe's Gladiator in space.
Okay.
Eventually, Hulk is freed. He leads a revolution, and he takes over and becomes the ruler of the planet.
Okay.
All the while, he falls in love. He marries a woman. He has twin children.
Oh, hold on. Hulk or Banner?
Hulk. He doesn't.
Does he marry another Hulk?
It's another alien. Yeah.
Is it Hulk?
Not really.
Is it as big as Hulk?
Big enough. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Big enough. Interesting, Pat.
So this one kind of revitalized the Hulk series. He got launched into space, and it's different from he actively chose to go to space.
Which we need to talk about because I forgot to bring that up in the movie.
How did he get there?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now, do you remember when we talked about this at the end of Ultron? There was a comment passed that they found his ship crash landed somewhere.
Yes,
do you remember
like
that?
The Baltic Sea or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So you remember that happened, right?
Yeah.
And yet there's the ship on Sakaar.
Yep.
So explain this.
I can't explain that.
I couldn't find it anywhere. Like nobody's. I mean, I don't want to
think. Are we breaking news here?
No, we can't be. We can't be the only two people that have thought about this, unless we're missing something.
I don't know.
The 7 people that listen to this podcast, if you know what the heck is happening, you got to let us know,
please,
because I am at a loss. I have no idea how we're okay with this stuff. But anyways, go ahead.
Find us on Instagram at Yet Another MCU Podcast.
How does
Message
Hulk
us.
get to Sakaar when we have found out in Ultron that the plane that he was on was abandoned in the Baltic Sea? Explain that.
Please.
Let's move on.
So in the comic version, the group called the Illuminati, and this is where you're going to lose it.
Please. Really? This part? This is where I'm going to lose it?
So the Illuminati was all the smartest people that had representation from the X-Men, so Charles Xavier, from the Avengers, Iron Man, Fantastic Four had Reed Richards, Namor the Submariner for Atlantis, I believe Black Panther was on there, Black Bolt. All this came together to kind of protect Earth. And they realized that Hulk was getting too strong and too crazy. They shot him into space and they forced it to go through a warp hole, and he ended up on Sakaar.
Listen, from my experience of watching the A-Team, you just have to get him to drink some milk like they did with BA.
Yeah. I don't know. So the end of Planet Hulk, after he, rules the planet, the ship blows up and it kills his wife and kills half the city that he rules. And so he gets really angry again, and he heads back to Earth in the series World War Hulk, where he tries to destroy.
Is that a
it's another event
series?
Yeah, that happened right
World
after.
War Hulk.
Yep.
Awesome.
So this was Planet Hulk. That's where they get a lot of the Gladiator piece of it. They get a lot of the Sakaar piece of it. Hulk being this, champion.
What about the Searcher stuff and the?
So Surtur, this is a new character for us here. He was first created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby back in Journey into Mystery, and so he appeared like 15 issues after Thor first appeared. So he was one of those those villains very early on in the process, and they steal pieces from Norse mythology to boost up the Thor mythology. Same thing. He was imprisoned by Odin, and then it becomes a prophecy that he will be freed and he will bring Ragnarok and destroy Asgard. And so here we are. So similar to how we get it in the film here, during what they call the final Ragnarok, and I'll get to that in a second, Thor allows Surtur to storm Asgard and destroy what remains of it because, needed to.
Right.
So he let that happen because it broke the cycle. And the reason there's a cycle, and this actually goes back to Norse mythology, is the gods of Asgard, the Norse gods, would die and then be resurrected and die again, and they'd go through this cycle over and over again. And Ragnarok is that cycle of death and rebirth. Man, we are dropping history, we are dropping science, we are dropping mythology today. So Ragnarok in the comics is usually preceded by two events, and it's a long cold winter, similar to Game of Thrones, and then Loki causing the death of certain characters, one being Balder, who's a relative of Thor. Loki is usually at the center of it, and one of the prophecies of this Ragnarok spoke of him leading the charge against Odin and Thor, and that, like I just said, Surtur would rise up and level the remaining Asgard. As much as Surtur was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, we also know from the Thor Dark World episode that Walt Simonson, who had a tremendous run on the Thor character, he really took a lot of these pieces, both from the real mythology and from what Stan and Jack had kind of built up already, and did a great job with it. So he was, the writer behind a ton of these concepts, and a lot of the visuals that we get in this film, whether it's Surtur's or Fenris or even Scourge, comes from the Simonson era. He did Ragnarok for a little bit. He did some of these storylines, but there was a 6-part story in 2004 called Ragnarok. And this is the one where Thor gains what they call the Odin Force, the Odin Force being those yellow laser energy blasts that Odin has out of his staff, or the Destroyer has out of his face. And, he stops Ragnarok from happening. So he breaks the cycle. He doesn't allow it to happen. And this now ties back into I believe it was the Thor 1 episode that saw Asgard over Oklahoma.
Oh,
so
right now.
Where they planted Asgard. So he broke the cycle of this, and then they put Asgard, away from the actual, where it was.
It's in Norway somewhere.
Yeah. And then in the 9 realms, they moved it to Oklahoma.
His electricity bolts, is that Thor Force? Is that what that is? Or is that the same thing as Odin Force? That's what I have a Thor Force thing written down in my notes.
I don't know what Thor Force
maybe
is.
It's the same thing.
Maybe it could be the same thing.
Yeah. So in the comic, Loki is actually the father of Hela.
Yes.
And I don't know who Furnace the Wolf is. What is that? Tell me about that.
He's a big wolf.
He's the father of the wolf too?
Yeah, he's the father of the wolf. Hang on. I'm getting there.
Explain that.
Getting there.
Ew.
Yeah, so there's a reason Cate Blanchett's character looks like Loki and not like Odin or Thor, because they pulled her straight from the comics where Loki was her father.
Okay.
And so the idea was that in a previous Ragnarok where, some of the characters didn't get erased, Thor fathered Hela. And so I have it here.
Thor fathered
No,
Hela?
I'm sorry. Loki followed Hela. And so it goes that, Loki, appointed her, or trained her, fathered her, and then Odin appointed her goddess of death.
Okay.
And so, again, she appeared really early on in the Thor run. She worked with Loki to face off against Thor, tempting him to go to Valhalla, to go to death when he was weak. And then same thing with Fenris. He was the offspring of Loki and a giantess. I don't know why he's a wolf, but I guess, and he comes from like the Norse version of the Red Riding Hood myth. So he's the wolf that, hunts down Red.
Okay.
Thor and Loki do have a sister, but it's a new sister. She wasn't an initial character in the Kirby runs or the Simonson runs. She got introduced back in like 2014, 2015. Name was Angela. She was a character created in the Spawn series by Neil Gaiman, who's the writer of Good Omens, American Gods, all those things. And then Spawn was not a Marvel character. It's a different publishing imprint.
Vertigo, right?
I think it was Image.
Oh, man. I was trying to think.
So close.
I'm getting there.
So close. Yeah, so somehow Marvel gained the rights to her, and she, appeared, having said that she was initially kidnapped by a group of angel assassons. It's weird.
I'm still on the fact that Loki had a wolf baby. So you're talking about it's weird. That's weird. I don't know. What Loki?
I don't know how that happened. Maybe it was
and now you're saying this with a giantess. So did Loki make himself big? Like
I don't know.
What was the comic like for that? Did they even show anything?
I don't think so. I think it was like
dropping acid when they did this.
It was the 70s.
Yeah. Then yes, they were doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Woo. All right. Okay. I will say this though. I do like Cate Blanchett as Hela. I like Cate
Wish
Blanchett.
we had more of her.
Regardless, she's a great actress.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. But they just don't use her enough at all. All right. So in the Civil War comic, and we talk about this in our Civil War episode, there's a Thor clone that's called Ragnarok. Is that just a happy accident? Or
No, I mean, it was specifically named Ragnarok
by
Reed Richards and Tony Stark.
They know about the Thor Ragnarok legacy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they do. And they were, so the Thor Ragnarok stuff happened, the 2004 series. Iron Man and Captain America were involved in it. So they know about this cycle of it. And Thor has, appeared and died and come back to life several times. So they know about the cycle. So yes, this was specifically titled Ragnarok.
Okay.
This wasn't an Easter egg. That was a moment where they said, okay, he's going to be our Thor, almost like a backup plan, depending on what happens, wherever the real Thor is.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. So back to Hela real quick.
Yep.
You talked about Thor's sister Angela, and you said that Hela, the reason why she looks like Loki is because that's what she looked like in the comic, but they also based her on the Thor sister that you talked about, which I assume they just used, hey, she's a sister. That's
basically, yeah.
And then
maybe
Gore,
it makes it more, I mean, so this is the moment where I think they realized how many fans Tom Hiddleston Loki had.
Okay.
And there was a thing back when this came out on the Marvel website. You could go and like read bios for the characters and everything. And it changed his from villain to anti-hero.
Do you think that they were pivoting him that way because they wanted you to feel bad to what happens to him in Infinity War?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm right here, brother. All right, anyways. Let me say this about Loki. I do not like his outfit in this movie. It's very Batman Forever-ish.
Very pleathery.
Yes, very just kind of like, oh, this is your cool hero here. This is your new outfit. What?
Where Thor gets a great look.
He has a great look, but he, that's something that he has to put together as the movie goes on. Loki chose to wear that. Right. So, anyways, even Hela's look is good.
Yeah.
She's also based on Gore the God Butcher. Is that accurate, or is that just a bad note? That
I don't know that at all.
You don't know who Gore the God Butcher is?
I don't know who Gore the God Butcher
Pat,
is.
do you know how this show works? Well, then I guess we'll just skip over that because Pat's just choosing not to look up stuff for comics for you people. All right.
I didn't see that note when you sent it. I must have missed it.
You tell me every week to send you an email with all my notes.
I have all your other notes.
And you're not even looking at it. All right. Anyways, the Revengers, Pat.
Okay, the Revengers.
Who are the Revengers in the comics?
This is such a stupid reference. This is such a stupid reference. So the Revengers were a couple of different teams. First, we go back to the various universes of the Marvel Comics. In Marvel Comics 2, MC2 universe, there's a team of supervillains, and then there's also a parody universe. So 665 was a parody universe, and they are in there, and they are, basically a play on the Avengers. And then there's the version from Earth 616, so the main Marvel universe. So they first appeared in New Avengers Annual a while ago, and they have nothing to do with this team. They have nothing to do with this. This is just a rebranding. And the reason it's a rebranding is because the name Defenders is already taken by the Netflix series. Most of the players you see on the Revengers, I say in air quotes over here, are on the Defenders. Hulk, Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, Valkyrie, Namor. Those are the Defenders.
Yeah.
What are you revenging? What does that even mean?
I'm disbanding the Revengers.
Are you defending Sakaar? Yes. It probably should have just been Defenders, and you should have just given up on the Netflix series.
Why couldn't they just use the name? Was it going to get sued?
No, they own both of the names. I think it was just going to confuse people, but they weren't. So this is stupid.
Yeah. All right. You already talked about the Walter Simonson Thor comic story, so I'm not going to even bother talking about how Loki was Odin in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I couldn't find the exact issue, but it happened a couple times where they would,
And you talked about some of the comic events. You talked about Siege, right? You did mention that about the same fate. Asgard had the same fate. We talked about all that.
I think we talked about Siege in a previous episode.
Yeah.
This is back when Norman Osborn had taken over S.H.I.E.L.D. after Civil War.
Right.
Turned it into Hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And he invaded Asgard.
Okay.
He basically pull the same thing.
Absolute no sense.
Yeah.
But all right.
Yeah. But this got some of the Avengers back together. It does have a moment very similar to how Civil War, the comic, kicks off, and it's Volstagg, one of the Warriors 3, who just dies off unceremoniously in this movie.
Yeah, the two of them they kill off like that.
Causes an explosion in a football field, and it sets off this chain of events that forces Osborn to invade, and so Thor and the Avengers have to hold him off.
Okay. The reference of Loki turning Thor into a frog was from the comic. Is that even is that even remotely worthy of us to talk about?
It is actually.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so it is. And there's a couple good, there was a good Hollywood Reporter article on this that dove into it a little bit more. So if you're interested in reading more, but yeah, so Simonson's run, he has Loki turn Thor into a frog. And so Frog Thor possessed the strength of many frogs. And so he used it. And there was this whole analogy between what's going on in Thor's real day to day with him versus Loki when he's leading a fight against Central Park rats. So it sounds stupid and it sounds absurd, but it's actually really good.
You're right.
Just go check it out. It's in Thor number 363.
This isn't the recommended section right now.
Yeah.
You put it there.
I think I did. But yes, he turns into the frog. This he gains his hammer back, and so when Frog Thor gains his hammer, he then becomes Thor Frog.
Is it a small tiny hammer?
No, it's a big regular size.
So there's a small frog.
Yes,
holding this giant hammer.
No. He touches it and he grabs it and he wields the power of Thor, and then he turns into a man-sized frog shaped like Thor, and then eventually it wears off.
God.
Moving on.
Please don't put that in a movie. All right. So I'm gonna go through.
I wouldn't put it past Taika Waititi.
I want to talk about some characters where they appear, and then if you want to talk about them, you can.
Yeah.
If you don't, that's fine too. Korg made his debut in the 1952 Journey into Mystery number 83. Valkyrie first appeared in the Avengers Volume 1 number 83, and then
I want to talk about.
Yeah, you go back.
First.
I'm just doing all three.
Yep.
Scourge, you can do whatever you want. I'm just going through them. Scourge's Last Stand, which you mentioned already, is from Thor number 362.
Yes.
Pat, talk about what you want to talk about.
We talked about the Korg piece already. He was on the cover. He was the cover villain. The Stone Men from Saturn were the cover villain in Thor's original comics. So we won't spend too much time on that one.
And he's a member of the race in Thor: The Dark World when he's fighting him, right?
The Stone Men that we see in the cold open there.
We talked already about.
Yeah. So we're not going to spend too much time on them. Valkyrie was introduced, like you said, in Avengers number 83 by Roy Thomas and John Buscema. She becomes a part of the Defenders team, as I mentioned. This version of Valkyrie was known as, she had a name. She just happened to go by. She was a Valkyrie, but her name was Brunhilde.
Is that?
She looked exactly like the picture that you all had in
awesome.
your head.
I didn't expect that. So is that her name in this? Is her name supposed to be that in this movie?
No, I think she's just Valkyrie in this movie.
She can't take the name of the. That's not that. I want to know her real name. Somebody's got to know her real name. There's a board at the MCU off. Where's the Marvel Creative Committee? What's her real name?
I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
She looks exactly like Brunhilde. Looks exactly like what you imagine. Blonde, pigtailed, armored Norwegian, Viking woman. Then there's a similar moment in the War of the Realms series, which we talked about in Thor: The Dark World, where the War of the Realms had Malekith, invading, trying to take over Asgard, where her troop of Valkyrie warriors was slaughtered by Malekith. And so that is, where some of this pulls from, though I think War of the Realms happened after Thor Ragnarok, so could be wrong in that. It wasn't until 2018 when Marvel relaunched the character with a design, characterization, swagger of the Tessa Thompson version. And she was known as Valkyrie.
Mm-hmm.
So the one in the one in the comics now is very similar to the version that we get in this movie. And this is similar to what we saw with Yondu,
right? Where
he was redesigned to look like Michael Rooker.
Right. So the Valkyries.
Yes.
What are they exactly?
They're this.
Are they like the Green Berets kind of thing?
Kind of, yeah.
So they can be trained.
Odin's Green Berets.
So they can be trained, right? They're not like some touched by God to be the Valkyries, right? They're not like okay. So
they're the highest fighting force.
My question is this: you don't have any more? So once they all died, you were just like, no more Valkyries. Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. If they're a part of the four, All right. Anyways,
I don't know.
that's all I got for comic stuff from me.
Yeah, I'll give you just Scourge real quick. I'll just say the last stand scene that we see him
Jumping from the ship.
where he's jumping
Yeah.
from the ship with the M16s. That's straight out of the comics,
Okay.
including the M16s. And so when he's not jumping out of the ship, but he's holding off the bridge as Thor and other Asgardians look to get away from a invading force, and he's defending against Hela's army.
Right.
And so one of the Asgardians hands him crates of M16s and says, "Have that."
And he doesn't name them like he does in this movie, right? He doesn't name them Des and Troy.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, I'll get to why I asked that.
No, but the scene where he's dual fisting the machine guns is
Dual fisting.
It's a
It's a
play
term.
Call of Duty.
It's a term.
Play Call of
I
Duty.
don't. I'm an adult.
I haven't bought a Call of Duty in like 7 years. But this podcast can be sponsored by Call of Duty.
You're just throwing out the sponsorship request. All right. The reason why I asked that is because the one note we'll talk about this movie and it's in the role of
Yeah.
the MCU, but it's not a lot. So we'll probably just talk about the movie again. What Waititi says that this movie, that 80% of this film is improvised.
It feels that way.
Yes, agreed. Agreed.
I know that Iron Man 1 was mostly improvised too, but it doesn't feel that way.
No.
And that's what happens when you have. I'm not a fan of Taika Waititi, and our listeners can't see this, but I think there's a spectrum. Like on the far left side, let's say, is like the more serious directors. So you have Ryan Coogler, you have Jon Favreau, maybe you have Joss Whedon over there, with the Russos somewhere in the middle. Then on the other side, you have James Gunn and Taika Waititi.
You don't like Gunn at all?
He's better than Waititi. I think Waititi's so far to the other side that he doesn't know how to tell a story.
Well, I think I think it's not about, I would say, I would agree with you. It's not really, what you're referencing is not about directing style. It's more about storytelling.
Yes.
I agree with you there. Yeah.
And I think the other two rely more on, and again, you brought it up. I haven't seen Jojo Rabbit.
I was just going to say, to be fair, you have not seen
I heard
all
it's
his
phenomenal.
movies. Yeah. But have you seen the vampire one? What We Do in the
Yes.
Shadows?
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's funny.
But it's not,
funny.
it's not like a big, like you wouldn't watch that movie because, oh my God, the storytelling is
Right.
amazing. It's just funny.
It's
a mockumentary type.
You
Yeah.
put it on TV, you
Yes.
do something else
Yes.
with it in the background.
Yes.
And so, like, I think, they relied too much on jokes
Yeah.
to get the characterization over.
Yeah.
Versus the other guys who, I think, and we'll talk about Black Panther next month and Ryan Coogler, who is a fantastic storyteller.
Mhm.
And he can insert jokes where they fit.
Yeah.
But he doesn't rely on them to get the
Story
emotional
should
payoff.
always be first.
Yeah.
The story should always be first, unless you're making a comedy and you want to,
You still should have story first.
you should have story first. You know what? You're right. I take the back. Story should always be first, and then know what type of story you're telling, and then what fits in. I've been on countless times where I've been shooting something, and someone would be like, "Oh, it'd be funny if I did this," and I would be like, "Well, we're not doing that."
Yeah.
It's like I get it, it's funny, but like that's not the movie,
It doesn't fit.
right? So. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely 100% story should be first. And for some reason it's not sometimes. And that's fine. That's just how certain people direct. Waititi also said that he felt this movie would reinvent the franchise. I don't know how many more Thor movies do I need?
You're going to get at least one more.
Yep. You really think that Natalie Portman's going to keep going? No, come on. No, this is it. This is the movie. So now am I to assume that Hemsworth dies in this movie if she's the new Thor?
I don't know. Maybe there's a new. Does Mjolnir get? Because she wields the mighty Thor wields.
But she
the
becomes.
actual
But I've been
Mjolnir.
told that she becomes Thor.
Yeah, she becomes the mighty Thor.
So
that's
then
the
he
character
should be dead, right?
name. Well, he became unworthy, and that's when.
When did he become unworthy?
in the comics? When she became the mighty Thor, he was unworthy.
I'm talking about in the MCU.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Like when is he unworthy?
I guess the beginning of or the middle part of Thor 1.
No.
Like, no, I'm just saying. Like I don't know now. I can't give you an answer
All right.
now.
Okay. He's got to be dead. But my biggest MCU note is that this movie is supposed to take place during the events of Captain America: Civil War, which is to explain why they're not there, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that shape
Well,
up?
I don't know if that's necessarily the case because you have, and maybe this is where the timeline gets a little screwy. This leads directly into Infinity War. Like the last shot of them
Is them getting picked up.
The teaser is them getting picked up by Thanos'
You're
ship.
right. You're right.
And so
Well, when does the next movie is Black Panther? When does that supposed to take place? Right after it's supposed to probably takes place concurrent with this because they have the Winter Soldier.
correct.
So
Yeah.
so Black Panther and this movie
Take place concurrently.
should take. Well, they should. They might overlap,
Right.
but they should take place at the same time.
Basically, yeah.
And then after that, you have what's next after Black Panther? Infinity War, right? Am I wrong?
Yes. No, it's
So
Infinity
then that
War.
makes sense.
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I mean, I guess the timeline gets a little. I'm trying to think if and we'll see it next week. If Black Widow is in that teaser at the end of Black Panther when they leave Bucky in Wakanda, because I think if she is, she probably still has the red hair. And at what point does she dye it? And the Secret Avengers group goes on the run.
Right.
So I don't know.
There's not a lot of connections with this movie
I think-
affecting anything in the MCU.
No, I think the timeline is so. This movie opens up with Thor saying he went looking for the Infinity Stones, despite the fact that 4 of them are on Earth.
Yeah. Well, so no, they first hear about him, don't they? In
In Age of Ultron.
yes,
And so in this one, so Age of Ultron, he leaves. We
He's
don't
gone.
see him again until this movie.
right.
He says to Surtur in his weird you know,
Yes.
monologue
Yeah.
that I went looking for the Infinity Stones, which, by the way, do the joke once where he's spinning around.
Yeah. That
Don't-
was. Yep.
You know, that's another example of them overusing it. But he says he went looking for them and he couldn't find them and he ended up in Surtur. So I think during the events of Civil War, that's when he's looking for the Infinity Stones.
Right. And yeah.
So we're led to believe that between Infinity War, Spider-Man Homecoming, because that takes place a couple months after Civil War, we know that from Peter's text messages and,
Right.
and all that stuff, that he had spent that time looking for the stones.
Right.
And so for the, I don't know, 6 months, year or so that, you know, Hulk's on Sakaar, that's when he's becoming this champion. And that's, you know, he
Yeah.
amasses this following.
We haven't even talked about how Doctor Strange is in this movie.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, Doctor Strange is in this movie. I mean, why? To just connect it?
I guess so. And
Yeah.
I'm worried that after seeing this and hearing all the rumors about the Doctor Strange movie, the Spider-Man movie, which we touched on last episode, that they're going to make him the connective leader of the next phase of films. And it's just like, we don't need him.
Well, they need that. Yeah. Well, agreed. I honestly, you need to seriously consider bringing the Fantastic Four back.
Yeah.
Within this MCU, because you've already lost Stark,
Mm-hmm.
and granted, we all know he's coming back. And if I've already read that Tobey Maguire, I'm sure he's already announced it, that he's coming back. It's so, which I like Spider-Man, the Raimi trilogy. I know Spider-Man 3 is terrible, but I gotta tell you, you shave 15, 20 minutes off Spider-Man 3, it's not that bad.
I agree.
It's actually not that bad.
I agree.
So I like Raimi. It's Raimi Spider-Man. So him doing Doctor Strange
Is a plus.
I like, but I really hope that they just back off and let him do Doctor Strange.
Yes.
You don't need to micromanage Sam Raimi.
No.
You don't. Just don't touch him.
Guy's been doing this for 30 years. He
and
knows what he's doing.
And I would love if they came to him and he's like, yeah, I'll do it, but I'm doing it. And
Yeah.
you can go sit on the sideline and
Not
watch
like
me.
the other guy you kicked off.
Right. And watch me make a good movie, because he'll do it well. But here's the thing, like that tone of that movie of Strange is going to be so different than the tone of the first Strange.
Well, the more that we see Strange in the other MCU movies, whether it was this scene in Thor Ragnarok, we see him in Infinity War, his tone and characterization it changes, but it gets better.
Yeah.
He was that flat out jerk he was mean
Yes.
in his movie.
Yes.
And then we see him in this and he's got a little bit more
He's sarcastic.
He's got less of an edge to him.
Right,
But it's a sarcasm that fits his character. And then we see him again in Infinity War and the same thing. It's softening those edges, but in a way that makes sense to
Yeah,
who he
and
is.
it's tough too, because he knows what's going to happen. So it's
Right.
kind of like he's working with that knowledge of Tony's going to die,
Yeah.
and I can't tell him that, but that's the only way this is going to work.
Right.
So I get that. That makes sense. But like I said before, this movie is the only movie that it's in the MCU, but other than characters being in the movie and references to certain things, it has no effect on anything else moving
No.
forward. No effect on anything.
No, I mean, if you cut out the line, I went looking for the Infinity Stones, you don't need to see
Right.
any other movie to watch this movie.
You can make a case that the beginning of Smart Hulk is in this movie, because
Yes.
he was Hulk for 2 years and he has to rectify that.
Mhm.
He has to come to grips with the fact that they have to coexist. I mean, I am doing a deep dive into that, like that's me looking into it.
Mhm.
I'm not going to necessarily tell you that was their intent, but you can make a case for that.
Yes. And then the next time we see him, aside from the opening of Infinity War, he has trouble getting back to that Hulk mode again. So
Right.
he's in this constant struggle, but this is the problem, and we've talked about it several times now. A lot of the Hulk storyline happens in somebody else's movie.
Oh, of course. He's never going to have his own
No.
film. We've already talked about that. And I absolutely hate him in an Infinity War. I hate it.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm just like, he's like, yeah. And he's in that stupid suit. And I'm like, ugh. Yeah, it stinks. It's just so uninteresting.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Anyway.
Hela is the first female villain in the MCU. Tell me I'm wrong.
Are you right?
Scarlet Witch doesn't count.
No, Scarlet Witch. No, so it's Jeff Bridges. It's Tim Roth. It's
You're gonna go
Mickey
through all of
Rourke.
them, aren't
Yeah, I'm
you?
gonna go through all of them. It's Jeff Bridges. It's Tim Roth. It's Mickey Rourke. It's
Hydra.
Loki, it's Loki. It's it's Red Skull. It's Hugo Weaving. It's Loki again in the Chitauri. It's Guy Pearce in the Mandarin, which I guess maybe you could kind of make Rebecca, whatever her face is.
No, you can't count.
Then it's Bucky, the Winter Soldier, and Hydra. Then it's Malekith and the Dark Elves. Ant-Man and we have Ultron, and then we have Yellow Jacket. Then we have Civil War. Yeah,
She's the first female
villain.
Is she the only though? Because moving forward, there's not.
You got Killmonger after this.
Yep.
You have all the Thanos stuff, so
Yep.
there's no villains there. And then in Captain Marvel, you have Jude Law, and then in Spider-Man, you have Mysterio. So yeah, she's it.
What's up with that?
Come on, Marvel, where's your representation?
I mean, and quite honestly, you never see Hela die. You just see her disappear.
Yeah.
So like we want, like I will be first in line. Pat, I will call you, and I will tell you that I am watching this movie. Well, hopefully I probably won't be at the theater at this point, but that, when Justin Hammer comes back, we will be the first ones there because we love Justin Hammer.
We'll do yet another MCU watch party wherever that is.
Yeah,
you
Disney
are all
Plus.
invited.
Clearly, it's going to be on Disney Plus.
We could do the Disney Plus watch piece.
And but yeah, so
actually, we should do that. Now that I say that, when we would do Endgame, and we should set that up. So pay it. Maybe we'll try to do a watch party for Endgame or do something on Disney Plus.
That's fine.
Now that we say that out loud, but yes, we'll be first in line for Justin Hammer.
But yeah, can we get another female villain? I mean, you can't really count Annette Bening in Captain Marvel because she's a projection, right? So that doesn't count either.
She fights Jude Law.
Yeah.
And then we know in Black Widow it's going to be Taskmaster.
What is the other? I know they announced all the movies.
The Eternals.
I don't know what that is. In terms of the villain. I know what the Eternals are. I know I've learned that.
No, there's nothing. I can't think of. I'm trying to think. And then you got Doctor Strange. I guess in WandaVision we're expected to have Agatha Harkness.
That's not a movie though. I'm not counting that.
There is nothing connecting this really to much of the rest of the MCU.
Yeah.
I do feel bad that all of the Warriors 3 get unceremoniously just killed off in the beginning. Thor's best friends, and just there they go. They don't put up you know what that scene reminded me of? The scene in Revenge of the Sith when Mace Windu brings his the squad of Jedi to take on Palpatine, and 4 of the 5 of them get killed off.
I know. Jedi are weak in that movie.
Yeah. Anyway,
the younglings. Okay, so I think we're gonna wrap it up. I'm going to leave. Next week we'll be back and we'll be talking about Black Panther, which I am a big fan of. I'm actually, I gotta tell you, I watched in the theater and I've seen parts of it, but I haven't seen it since. So I'm kind of hoping it holds up.
I watched it. I watched it a couple months ago,
but I remember really liking it.
Yeah,
with the exception of the fight scene at the end because it's really digital and it's really off-putting.
Yeah.
I like the idea of them fighting between the trains.
It's cool.
Yeah, but it got a little too CG for me at some point. But that's me being technical.
We'll pick on it next time. But
we'll
there's not much
on it.
No, I mean there's not much to pick on. I guess that's.
But yeah, that's next week. And that's going to wrap up our phase 3.
Oh, phase 3 part 1.
Part 1, right? Sorry. Yep. So I don't know why I'm jumping forward. But anyways, next week's Black Panther. And then right now I will leave you. Pat's got some recommended reading. And I swear to God, if it's the frog one, I'm not going to like that. But anyways, Pat, take it away. As always, at the end of each episode, we like to send you home with some recommended reading that follows up on some of the characters and plots presented in this week's film. Our recommended reading section is sponsored by Infinite Heroes, comics, cards, and collectibles in Watertown, Connecticut. If you're in the Connecticut or New England area, it's a great location to pick up comics from Marvel, as well as DC, Image, and more. They also have a large collection of trading cards, toys, and collectibles. Owner Paul Santos has worked in comics for years, most recently as an editor at DC Comics. Ask him for a recommendation and tell him we sent you.
All right, so first up on recommended reading for Thor Ragnarok is Planet Hulk. The Green Giant pulls a Russell Crowe and becomes a revolutionary gladiator. You're not getting a standalone Planet Hulk movie. This was it. So if you want more of it, check out Greg Pak and Carlos Pagulia's epic run as Hulk gets stranded in space, becomes a gladiator, and finally king of Sakaar. Next, we have Loki, Agent of Asgard by Al Ewing and art by Lee Garbett. If you've fallen in love with Tom Hiddleston's character, then this is the series for you. Loki is on the road to redemption as he performs missions for the All-Mother to save his soul. And then finally, we have Thor Visionaries, Walt Simonson Volume 2. I believe the Thor frog story is in this one. We already gave you Volume 1 in our previous recommended reading segments. In Volume 2, Simonson expands on his Asgardian mythology and unleashes Ragnarok upon Asgard. Also, we get that horse face Thor himself, Beta Ray Bill, and as I mentioned, probably Frog Thor. But thanks for listening. Enjoy your reading. Remember to please rate, review, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.